Happy New Year. Today is January 1st, 2023, as I am recording this currently. And I just really want to talk about what I learned in 2022. But before I get into that, like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends, because it really does help.
Everything starts with our thoughts. Thoughts dictate our beliefs, which then dictate the way we treat and view the world, which then becomes our repeated being. And that is our personality, which then is our personal reality.
So 2022 was a very eventful year for me. There was a lot that happened. I was able to grow my business to 6 figures in 6 months. I was able to travel more than I've ever traveled in my life. And then on top of that, actually start a family and have a child who's going to be due here in the next month, actually.
I'm freaking out. I'm freaking out.
So with that being said, a lot has happened, and every year I like to look back and really digest what happened and what really were the main key things, what were common trends and things that I've actually learned. But not only that, maybe were highlighted to me, so then I can actually really hyper focus on them to be able to be better the next year and do more and be more, right? So I'm going to share that with you today. First thing that I really want to share is the importance of habit and reflection. And not only just, reflection in the sense of, looking back at the year, but reflection on a consistent basis. Because this was the first year that I've actually applied, really diving into my core habits, diving into my core beliefs, my 5-year vision, and then reverse engineering that back into making it daily habits, but then also reflecting on that consistently while having accountability through either my team, my spouse, or some friends or mentors that I trust.
I love you guys.
And I was able to learn this from a company out here in San Diego called the Vival Group. They're a habit transformational company, and they do so much more with the diving into your core beliefs, your limiting beliefs, and all these things. And they really give you a good system and structure to being able to achieve your 5-year, 10-year goals in a really simple manner. So I really wanted to give them a shout out as I go into this importance of this and why it's something that I learned this year. Going into the aspect of it is that we all know, at least we'd hope that we all know, is that habits are extremely important. Habits are, the building blocks of our day-to-day life, whether we know it or not. They either work for us or against us. And a lot of times, habits tend to work against us because we don't always carry our habits intentionally. We kind of just let our habits kind of set into whatever it is that we've accumulated over time. So whether it's, we see a parent do something and we then mimic that subconsciously, and then that then becomes a habit. And then we tend to then just go along with that because it's kind of our set default.
It's bullshit. It's not normal.
That's an example of habits working against us. Now, there are some people who have, amazing parents and or those parents were intentional with setting good habits to their children, and then they have a great default, and that actually is the case where their habits work for them. But that's usually not always the case. So a lot of us have to then rework what our habits are to then shift away from bad habits to good habits. And then once we get into a good flow of that, then that's when our habits really start to work for us. And that's amazing. That's a great place to be. But the aspect of having great habits and having the reflection aspect of it is two things that I realized need to go hand in hand consistently. And the reason for that is because in the beginning of this year, I actually really suffered from an injury while at the gym, and I was honestly in a really bad place physically, and then ultimately it led into being in a bad place mentally. I realized, normally in a normal situation, I would kind of like give up for the rest of the year, just because I would really get in my head, really feel like, I didn't really do so great in the quarter 1, so I might as well, not try quarter 2 and then bleed that over into quarter 3, 4, and then ultimately not have a great year, and then probably then bleed that into the next year.
I'm not having fun anymore.
And that's really what happens all the time with a lot of people, is whether you have a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, and then what happens is that you start to then let those things bleed into the next day and the next day, and then eventually it's a month, and then eventually it's a quarter, and then eventually it's a year, then eventually it's half a decade, and then you see yourself having a miserable life just because you allowed yourself to not reflect and actually pinpoint what it is that happened. So when you have great habits and great reflection, what happens is that you have your habits working for you, but then life does happen and things are going to upset you. They are going to frustrate you, stress you out, give you anxiety within certain moments, and really test you. But you need to be able to reflect on that as well. And then for me, like when I was in a really bad rut, my habits were working for me because I was still showing up, regardless of how I felt. But a lot of times we can do that and then oversee our feelings and our emotions and kind of bypass them. But with the reflection, it gave me no choice but to face what it is I was dealing with or what it is I was feeling or thinking. So those two things always need to go hand in hand. Now, the second thing is more based off on leadership, and it's something that I've been trying to apply and be more intentional about with my team in my business, and that's really being a really good leader all around. I kind of came from a toxic leadership style from the military, where it's just very aggressive and it's you do what I say because you have no choice kind of vibe. And then transitioning into, running my own business, I wanted to go in intentionally not being that type of leader who's always fear-based. I had to really learn how to actually, lead people correctly, not just, yelling and screaming. And
I fucking told you to do it!
And a great mentor of mine actually told me that great leaders never need to yell. And that's a big thing because, it is, when you lead people, it can be frustrating. It is a lot of work and there's a lot of expectations and there's a lot of things that you are really carrying. And it's easy to kind of like lose your temper or, treat somebody in that fashion. So I really had to learn, to really lead people with both love and truth. So, being very loving with people, but also giving them the truth and telling them the fact of what it is that they did wrong or right, but then also reassuring them, as a human being, and you actually, meeting their emotional needs, not just being factual and being, oh well, this needs to get done, but actually, really genuinely caring about the person. Not necessarily genuinely caring about them, because it doesn't mean that I didn't care about them. But in reality, it's more of like expressing that care, being more intentional about expressing that care is really more what I'm trying to say.
Hey, you do care!
So the application aspect of it, the way that I started to apply this is being able to set the right expectations with the team, being consistent with setting those expectations, and always setting a parameter on being able to make sure that they can hit those expectations and be set up for success. As a leader, everything falls back on you.
It's your fault.
As a leader, every time when I set expectations, I just don't set a high bar. I also set a high bar, but I also provide a ladder to be able to hit that bar. I don't just say, hey, you need to be amazing and you got to figure it out, but I also like to give a layout, because I don't want to just set somebody up for failure. I want to set them up for success. And on the other aspect of that, I really had to learn too, and this is something I'm consistently even trying to get better at, is being able to understand the core needs of the people that work for me and having the ability to gift people the right chemicals. And what that means is really like knowing what people's drives are, whether it's like they're very passionate about being strategical, they're very passionate about, taking on, challenges. I have to understand what makes people, really feel like they're running in their lane. And then I have to then understand the way I deliver tasks and the way I assign tasks has to fill those needs in order for them to perform at their top potential, not just give them a task and be like, hey, this needs to get done, but instead understand like, hey, like I'm super excited to see what you're going to come up with, because this is a very creative project, and they might be more inclined to do more creative things. So then that's going to then induce the right chemicals and get them excited to be able to produce at their full potential. So that's something that I'm currently working on, and something I've actually really discovered in this past year to really lead effectively.
We'd all follow you anywhere.
And lastly, one of the biggest things for me, and it's actually kind of personal, but I'm always very open and love to share my personal vulnerabilities to hopefully, set some type of example, or maybe even, open up the floor for conversation if someone's dealing with something similar. But I'm becoming a father in this year, in the next couple of days, actually, next month pretty much.
Daddy?
And so this past year that really kind of started to reopen certain wounds. Like I currently don't know my father. Never met him before. Don't even know what he looks like. I realized that I had some type of resentment, really kind of harboring up, that I've been like really pushing to the side and not wanting to face. And it was cool. I was able to deal with it, really bury it away for a while. But then I had, me having a son really opened that up to a point where I couldn't ignore it. And so I realized, at least for me, that bitterness and resentment that I kind of was holding against my dad was getting not only in the way of me feeling confident to be a father, but also my relationship with God. You know what I mean? I'm personally a Christian, and I value my relationship with God, and I noticed in this past year I was kind of, shying away from my relationship with God a little bit, and I realized it was because of the bitterness that I had towards my actual father, because your relationship with your real father is always going to reflect your relationship with God. And I realized that those things usually go parallel, and I was noticing that trend. And I've never really talked about it to anybody. I talked about it to my wife first, and then I have great men in my life that I do life with, and I talk to them, and I got prayer for it, and I feel more at peace about it, to be able to talk about it. And it's something that I'm working through. But I feel it's something that I wanted to share, especially talking about what I learned this past year. So that's something that I currently, I feel like I'm 90% on overcoming currently right now as this video is being made. But we'll see how that goes. I mean, if this is something that you guys are interested in my personal life as well, I mean, I'm more than glad to share things like this. But that's really a wrap as far as what I've learned in these past 12 months of 2022.
That's all, folks.
It's been an amazing year. So much has gotten done, and this next year, 2023, is about to be even greater because we have so much in store with our business, with my family. Really, just a lot that's happening, and just really excited to see the moments and the content and a lot of the opportunity that's going to be created within this next year, which I'm going to be talking about in a few episodes here down the line. But with that being said, that is the end of this video. Like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend. Again, it does really help. So I really hope that you guys go into the next year of 2023 with the ability to learn from your mistakes, and maybe even learn from my mistakes and the lessons that I've learned, to be able to really make this year a great year. So with that being said, Happy New Year, and I'll see you guys soon.